Hello, everyone. My name is Rodolfo Machaca, and along with Christina and Mark, we will be talking to you about who is responsible for data breaches. So let's begin with the connected experience. The connected experience today has more users online than ever before. According to Statista, there are about 7.7 billion people in the world, with 4.2 billion people being active in the internet today. This means half of the world's population is an active internet user. In America, 89% of Americans use the internet on a daily basis. The amount of devices in a home increases the risk of any data breach. An average American home contains about 10 to 20 devices, with an average of 5 of those devices being susceptible to an attack. Did you know that just in 2018 alone, more than 1 billion people were affected by a data breach? Do you know anyone that was affected by a data breach, or were you one of those affected by a data breach within the last 5 years? So, who exactly is responsible for the protection of data? Is it the government's responsibility? Is it the company's responsibility? Or is each person responsible for their own protection of data? A report published by PwC stated that 92% of consumers put the responsibility on the companies. And a separate report published by Gigya, 63% of people believe that the responsibility lies on themselves, and 19 people believe that the company should be responsible. So, as you can see, there is no clear consensus on who is responsible, as different people have different opinions. What do you think? Do you think the government should be responsible? Should it be the company? Or should you, as the individual, be responsible for your own protection of data? Regardless of who is responsible for data protection, one thing certain is that individuals can take the necessary precautions to protect their data. In Module 5, we learned about hackers, attackers, and social engineering attacks. We also learned about the phases of a computer attack, and finally, the tools and techniques to detect and prevent these attacks. The minimum security that individuals should practice is password protection. Having a complex password can protect you from hackers and other malicious users from gaining access to your personal data. Tools such as multi-factor authentication are great ways to make these attacks harder for any of these hackers. Antivirus software is also another crucial step that is often overlooked. Users should have some sort of antivirus software installed and in place to mitigate any potential attacks. Trusted antivirus software such as McAfee and Norton can give you a peace of mind knowing that your personal devices are being protected 24 hours a day. Finally, remember that we learned about social engineering attacks. So please be aware of any malicious websites and restrict the amount of information that you share online. Be wary of any funny looking emails and any malicious looking websites.
Unlike many developed countries, the United States has a patchwork of regulations at the state and federal levels that protect data privacy. The textbook for this course covers many of them in Chapter 4 and in greater detail in Chapter 15. Some of the most significant federal laws in the U.S. are HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Many states are passing laws to support the enforcement of data privacy. In 2020, California passed the California Privacy Rights Act, CPRA, and Virginia passed the Virginia Consumer Data Protection Act that became effective January 1st of this year. Some states have had laws that have been around for quite some time now. In Illinois, the Illinois Biometric Information Protection Act, or BIPA, was passed in 2008. As the name suggests, this law protects biometric information. Do you know your state's privacy laws? Other countries have more comprehensive laws that aim to cover all data privacy issues for a region. The European Union passed the General Data Protection Regulation in May of 2018. This law is responsible for some of, if not the biggest fines related to data privacy. For example, in 2021, France issued Amazon with an $877 million fine. The two other regulations listed on this slide are PIPEDA and APPI, which are also comprehensive regional laws. PIPEDA stands for Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act, and that's Canada's privacy regulation. APPI stands for Act on the Protection of Personal Information, and that is Japan's privacy law. All of the data privacy laws, whether international, U.S., federal, or state level, have a few common themes. These laws aim to protect consumer data by requiring companies to implement security measures, such as encryption of sensitive data, access controls, incident response procedures, and vulnerability assessments. If your company does not comply with regulations, there are significant financial penalties. Amazon's $877 million fine was for failure to get cookie consent on its website. Facebook was fined when the full names, phone numbers, birth dates, and locations of users were posted on a hacking forum. H&M was fined when sensitive employee information was available to too large of an internal audience. Because data privacy regulations enable organizations to leverage penalties against companies, companies are ultimately the ones held accountable when a data breach occurs.
It's important for an organization to maintain privacy as businesses hold important things digitally, such as company assets, important documents, passwords for easy access to certain accounts, and data, such as user data that may contain personal information like names, addresses, and social security numbers. If a data breach were to occur and this information were to be leaked, as previously stated, the organization is to be ultimately held responsible for the breach. This is important as a breach not only affects an organization, but it reflects back to its stakeholders as well. The consequences of a data breach are long term. Such repercussions include holding the CEO at fault as they are the face of the company, a tarnished corporate brand name, loss of sales and income, employee turnover, and legal penalties. To keep such problems from ever occurring, it's good for an organization to try and prevent it ahead of time through good security practices. The main question is, how do you know if it's good security? And how can we reinforce it? Well, just as it's important to uphold security and privacy, it's just as important to know the reason as to why we need good security. It's hard to maintain security when the weakest link of any security infrastructure is the human. As humans, we're prone to making mistakes, and it's no coincidence that sooner or later we'll mess up. The integrity of a security infrastructure relies on us not making mistakes, but components such as weak passwords, lost devices, phishing websites and emails, malware, and ransomware attacks make it easy for cybercriminals to compromise such security. In addition, unsecured databases and outdated software also add to the easy access for malicious intent individuals to wreak havoc on an organization. To minimize such threats and maximize security, it's important for organizations to keep those weak points in mind when designing a good security infrastructure for an organization. Not everything is absolute, such as security, so it's important to try and maximize the security of any infrastructure as much as possible. This can be done in a multitude of ways, such as, but not limited to, authentication, encryption, access controls, and frequent auditing. Authentication allows the client to communicate with the server to let the server know that the client is who they claim to be and not an unwanted visitor. This is important as information shouldn't be disclosed to unauthorized people whatsoever. Encryption is important to consider as an organization surely wouldn't want hackers to eavesdrop on any important transaction made solely between company and client. Access controls is essential as it is determined who is rightfully allowed to access data and who isn't allowed to such information. Lastly, auditing is important to consider when making a security system strong. With auditing, an organization can take into consideration the appropriate security level of a security control, if security controls are installed correctly, and if a security control works. Security controls are crucial as they play a role to detect and respond to a data breach, which is key to protecting an organization. Just as it is important to stay safe in the workplace, it's just as important to stay safe outside the workplace as well. This can be done through methods such as two-factor authentication, frequent updates on software, tweaking the security and privacy settings, making sure to frequently monitor any suspicious activity on any of your accounts and to back up any important assets in the event of a data breach. Making sure to take such precautions can help prevent any issues in the future.